Today we are joined with Nathan Braaten, and he is a part of Damn Worth It, which is a student-led campaign that is utilizing the influential platform of athletics to open up the conversation on mental health in universities across the country. It was started by Nathan and his co-founder, Taylor Ricci, and these are two student athletes who saw change needed around the topic of mental health and suicide. So again, today we are joined by Nathan, and thank you for joining us, who is actually, I forgot to mention, Oregon State University soccer alum. So thank you, Nathan.
Hey, thank you for having me. I really appreciate being on.
Definitely. And, so it's been a tough year, as we kind of mentioned right before. So I want to ask, how are you actually doing right now?
To be honest, man, it goes in a lot of waves. I would say that during all this, I've definitely hit the highs of feeling like everything's going good, I'm figuring it out, and then definitely the lows of this is a really hard time to just be, in the United States, first of all, but just as a community member of the world, it's there's a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, a lot of unknowns. So on top of those, still feeling like trying to figure it out, like definitely having a lot of moments where I'm like, wow, I have no idea what's going to happen next week, next month. Um, and then definitely a lot of stress with that. And then seeing, I think, the the most hurtful thing is kind of seeing other people that you care about um, suffer as well because of everything that's going on. So, um, yeah, man. I mean, to be honest, it's been up and down for sure.
Yeah, and the one silver lining I've seen with the COVID-19 pandemic and just everything that's been happening is that it seems to really show that we're all affected by mental health. And that's why I love what you guys are doing at Damn Worth It. So just to touch more into that, what was your initial inspiration for, meeting with Taylor and starting Damn Worth It?
Yeah, well, Damn Worth It was born out of tragedy for us. I lost a friend from back home, and then 6 months later, lost a teammate of mine to suicide. And so those experiences, and especially being the second one, um, really set my mental health journey down a really dark path. Struggled with some PTSD stuff and a lot of depression and just this anxiety of losing people. And so kind of in the midst of going through that and recovering, um, I met Taylor, and I had become at this point very passionate about um, mental health advocacy, and just especially suicide prevention. And I met up with Taylor, and she had a very similar experience with one of her teammates and her mental health journey. So we connected right away, and immediately we were like, "Hey, let's go grab some coffee." Um, and what was supposed to be 30 minutes with coffee ended up being, I don't even know, a couple hours, 3 or 4 hours. And we basically put pen to paper on what was damn worth it, with the idea of just ending the stigma around mental health. And um, at the first, we were just like, if we could just save one life, that would be enough. And since then, obviously, it's grown into what it has today.
So just for those who may not be as familiar with Damn Worth It, what is kind of your main objectives or a mission statement? What are you guys really all about?
Yeah, so Damn Worth It's mission statement is to utilize the power of sport to end the stigma around mental health. So that's very broad and ambitious, but we do that through things like education and resources, um, whether that's providing them or partnering with people who do provide them. And then the more important one, I think, for where Damn Worth It is really uniquely positioned is it's a very peer-to-peer model, similar to the Strength and Stories event that you got to be a part of a couple of weeks ago. Really, there's something powerful about connecting with peers and hearing stories. And so Damn Worth It and that awareness was really, how do we just be vulnerable and create a platform for others to share their stories, encourage people to uh, speak out for mental health and let people know that they're not alone. So, we do things like the Damn Worth It games at Oregon State, where every sport has a mental health um, game every single year. or putting out documentaries like with our stories and whole different stuff like that, just to encourage vulnerability, storytelling. And it's really powerful when it comes from somebody that you look at as your peer.
And I just think I love everything about it. I love the emphasis on the student athlete. And so I want to talk to Nathan, the student athlete now. And we also talk about COVID-19 and everything going on. What advice do you have for athletes? You know, if you could put yourself in those positions, for those who may have lost their last season playing the sport already, or who are looking forward, like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to play next season. You know, what advice do you have for all those younger student athletes that are going through that right now?
Yeah, I mean, Trey, it's a really tough question, to be honest. I was thinking where I would do if I was in that position. Um, and to be honest, my first advice would be to be, as athletes, like we were taught to be resilient at a young age. I think athletes have a resilience about them where they're like they can go past a level of pain or a level of to know that there's going to be something at the end of the tunnel, right? So you work out hard so that you can experience the gain at the end. And so I would encourage athletes who are going through that right now to like keep on that grind, and try to see that light at the end of the tunnel, because there is, despite everything going on in this world right now, there is still so much positivity. And although it is kind of hard to see now, there's always a silver lining to everything. So as athletes, I'd first say, keep working hard, keep doing your thing, keep grinding, and it's going to end up paying off. And then the second thing I would say is like, make sure to be honest with yourself and give yourself grace. Um, you know, it's a super hard time, and there's a lot of unknowns and a lot of things changing every single day. And it's okay to be like, yeah, this is like seriously getting me down. This is my anxiety's through the roof, my depression's through the roof. Like, be super honest with yourself about what you need and how you feel, and like what you can do to take care of it. Because at the end of the day, like, that's the most important thing. If you can take care of yourself first, the rest of it's going to follow.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, speaking athlete to athlete, what advice, you know, because you mentioned resilience and how that's kind of how we're trained. And I know from my own personal standpoint, I dealt with anxiety as a freshman playing college football and whatnot. So for you as an athlete, we all hit those walls, we all struggles, we all get in those down moments. What did you do? You know, like, what performance enhancing tricks did you have to get out of those ruts, to get out of those tough times?
Yeah. To be honest, like, I think as an athlete, and especially as a male athlete, um, I had this thing in my head about like I always had to do everything alone. I always had to, work out everything on my own. I had to be strong on my own. And I think what the biggest thing for me and what got me out of a lot of my performance ruts, or whether it was in my head, like, was leaning on other people, whether it was coaches, teammates, trainers, whoever it was at the time. Um, like really leaning on other people to be like, hey, like, um, I can't do everything on my own. And to be honest, like, it was worse for me to try to do everything on my own. So I would say first, like, lean on other people. And a lot of times they're going to give you the strength that you need to get through. And then second, whenever I was like going through, I was like a very cerebral athlete. I thought through a lot of stuff in my head, and like if my head was right, like I would play better. So I would say, like, for those people, doing things like meditation before games or visualization or any sort of things that people can do to get their head right. Um, I'm a big believer in the fact that if you get your head right, that your body's going to follow. So those are sort of the two things that I would say, for athletes specifically that are struggling right now or in a performance rut or in any kind of rut.
And looking back at your career, what is your own personal highlight that you want to share? And then what's kind of a low light, and how'd you get out of that situation?
Oh man, yeah, there's definitely been a lot. Um, hmm. Well, I'm a big believer in starting with the bad news first, so I'll start with the the low light. Um, During my senior year, um, I got injured at the very beginning of the season. Um, I'd had a lot of ankle issues like through my life, and at the beginning of the my senior season, so my last season, messed up my ankle pretty bad and ended up missing like just over half the season. Um, and especially as a senior, you're like, and especially as a leader and a team captain, like you're going into that and you're like, I want to be with my team, I want to lead the team. And for anybody that's been injured, you know how hard it is to kind of sit on the sidelines and watch all that happen. um, and so that was definitely a low light where I was like, um, really really struggling. And I think that was sort of where I really got my mind right about like everything about sports life is all about mentality. If you can switch your mentality from why is this a negative thing to what's positive about this, what can I get out of it, um, your happiness, everything is just going to change right off the bat. um, and then I would say my highlight, um, now there were a lot of good things too. um, Man, um, I would say one of my biggest highlights, and I always, it's still like one of my favorite photos to this day. But after I lost my teammate, the one of the first games that I had played in the next season, um, I started writing his name on my wrist, like on wrist tape. Um, in one of the first games after we had lost him, I came on and I scored a goal, and I remember pointing up to the sky, and like kissing my wrist. And I'll remember that moment forever, just because it was such a like special moment. His parents were um, very supportive of us and the team, and just to like um, to score that goal and to like have that moment to just recognize him and the role that he'd played in my life um, was incredibly special. And got super lucky and had a photographer capture that moment. And to this day, I think it's my favorite picture ever. Um, but that was an incredible moment.
Yeah, I'm visualizing it as you're describing it, so I can
Yeah,
imagine how touching it was for you.
yeah, for sure. Athletes can definitely put themselves in that. It was a special thing, for sure.
Definitely. And you're doing so much for the athlete community and just opening up this world and bridging the gap between athletics and mental health. But really, I think what Dan Worth It is doing is everything you're doing is just more than just for athletes. Like, you guys are mental health advocates, really, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So I want to know, some of your general self-care tips, or maybe morning routine or something like that. There's just your general mental health self-care tips.
Yeah. So for me, the biggest thing was figuring out what worked. Um, I talk about this a lot, and I think that there is, um, as humans, when we go through life, like life is not always pretty, it's not always easy. And one of the things that I always encourage people is find your outlet. For me, and I bet for many other athletes, exercise is like the biggest thing. Whenever I'm like getting like in a place where I'm like, man, my mental is like not good, I'm not doing well, I have a lot of emotions, like I'll just go out and take a run, or I'll go and get a lift. And like that is it provides such a clarity for me. But what I would say is like anybody can replace that with what is their outlet. And not everybody knows what their outlet is. And so I would encourage people, like, first, like, try and figure it out. Just try different things, see how it goes. Maybe it's writing, maybe it's drawing, maybe it's reading a book, maybe it's whatever it is, finding that way and like really leaning into it whenever you're feeling upset, when your mental starts to go away. Um, the other thing that I would say is that for me in particular, like learning how to communicate with the people around me on how I was feeling has been really important. um, that communication is there's such a different weight around things when you put things out into the world. It almost creates like an accountability of like, okay, this person knows how I'm feeling. I feel accountable for that because it's out there now. It's real. You like put it. It's not just in your head anymore. Like you put it out into the world. And then the third thing that I would say is like, um, and like what you guys are doing with Flawless, and like there is something very healing and very special about giving back to others and about caring for others. And I think when you can provide a platform like Damn Worth It or like Flawless, and you guys are like giving back to the community, and Damn Worth It was like one of the biggest healing processes that I've ever experienced. Um, and that is obviously a very big like example. Like nobody has to go out and start like this huge campaign or this huge nonprofit to like make an impact, but like even going out and like volunteering at a soup kitchen, or like um, doing something for others, even if it's something small, just for your friend. Maybe your friend's been struggling and putting together a care package for them, and like there's something so healing about helping others and caring for others that like I can't even really put into words how therapeutic it is. It's helped me. I would say it was the biggest thing that helped me through everything that I was going through was creating Damn Worth It.
And that's why I love what you're doing at Damn Worth It, and that's why I love working for Flawless. Like you said, it's therapeutic, it's cathartic to do for others.
Yeah.
But my last question for you today, Nathan, is we have this concept of a flawless world. Here at Flawless, and it's very important, especially during a tough time right now where there's a lot going on in the world. But I just want to know for you, what is a flawless world? Or another way to think of the question is like, what gives you hope for a flawless world?
Hmm. Yeah, I read this question. I was super. I love this question. Um,
Like Taylor said the same thing, so it's funny that you said that.
yeah, well, her and I are pretty similar. Um, they when I first read the question, I remember thinking like I first jumped right away to perfectionism. And I think there's something really beautiful to be said about like nothing in this world is perfect. And I think that that's just a fact of how it is, but that's kind of the beauty in it. Um, I think I'm a really big believer in this idea of yin and yang. So there's this beautiful balance in the world of like light and dark. There's always dark inside the light, but there's always light inside the dark. And so with everything going on in the world, I kind of view like a flawless world as that. And so thinking about that, what like in terms of the question is like, there will always be hard things going on in the world. There was always be going to be good things going on in the world. And I think a flawless world would be a world where everybody looks at that first with like this eye of like, when things are going bad, like there's always something good to come out of it. Damn Worth It was born out of something like the most awful moment of Taylor and I's lives. And now it's this beautiful thing. Um, and so I would encourage like a flawless world for me is like a world where we can go about everything that's going on in this world, and we can always go about it with that sort of mindset of like, no matter what we're going through, no matter what's going on, thinking about it as like sometimes things get broken in order for them to build back stronger. It's the same way that muscles grow. You got to break them down so that they come back stronger. And I think a flawless world would be a world that we could look at everything like that. And in a way that like when we do build it back up, we're building it back up for others, and to lift others up. If we had a world like that, it could be a really special place.
I agree 100%. And I thank you, Nathan, for just being honest with us, for opening up and sharing your story. I know, it's not always easy to do something, especially with the way that Damn Worth It was started. So I appreciate you for that. For all of our Flawless family that's watching us, we will have ways that you can find and follow Damn Worth It in the description, as well as Nathan. And I just want to say thank you again, Nathan, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you again for having me.